Hi, everybody. My name is Harold Strong, and I'd like to welcome you to MIC Conversations. MIC is a nonprofit focused in North Texas, and we are here to facilitate the growth of the life sciences ecosystem by workforce, facilities, and funding. What this project is an opportunity to talk to innovators, folks involved with innovation, and thought leaders around life sciences and some of the developments that they've come up with. And today's conversation is going to be tremendous. I want to start the conversation with showing just a brief video that will kind of define what we're doing and what the conversation will be like. So hold on just a second.
Hi, my name is Jeff Gabbay, and I'm the founder of Argamon Technologies. Today, our BioBlocX Masks are protecting countless people from exposure to the COVID-19 virus. But few people know the story behind the mask, so I'd like to tell it to you. I'm a textile engineer with years of research and development and dozens of patents behind me. Yet when cancer struck me over and over, my mission became clear: to preserve the health of immunocompromised patients fighting for their lives every day. Who would have thought that the mask I developed to protect myself and others from bacterial and viral infections in and out of the hospital would now be used to protect people around the world from COVID-19. Now, there are a lot of masks out there, but none compared to ours. We use no nanoparticles due to health concerns. Our compounds are completely safe, and most importantly, our mask is the only one that deactivates 99.99% of the viruses that touch it within minutes, not hours. If you have COVID-19, you won't spread it. If someone near you tests positive, I can prevent you from being exposed to the virus.
Well, I'd like to introduce you to Jeff and Melory Johnson. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. And I enjoyed the video. I think the conversation's over now, right? It was very but thank you for joining.
It's not over. It's not
I know. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. So Jeff, Mel, again, thank you for being here. And we're looking forward to the conversation to learn more about not just the face mask, but other things that you're doing in this marketplace. Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about the background story of how you got into this, some of your educational background and that kind of thing?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for hosting us. And I hope that our audience will find what we have to say informative. I'm going to tell everybody something which is, let's just say, let's get into a frame of mind, okay? And the frame of mind I'm going to say is, by a show of hands, how many people know somebody who got an infection in a hospital? Okay? And by a show of hands, how many know somebody who unfortunately passed away because of that infection? All right, that's what we're really going to concentrate on in this conversation. The mask that you've seen is just a kind of, I'm not going to say it's a silly little sideline, because it will impact all of us. What we're out for is to show our audience that there are solutions out there which have never been tapped. We live in an age where new technologies can be used and give us products that have never been producible before, and they can be mass produced economically. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, every product that we're going to discuss, whether it's Melory or myself, are going to be products that are going to impact on every single person watching this tape. Wonderful. Not just you, but your loved ones, your families, your friends, everybody. So with that in the background, let me just give you a little background about myself.
Please.
Then Melory will talk a little about herself. I've got a rather motley background, okay? It's kind of strange, but you'll get used to it. And here I'm in Jerusalem, Israel, where everybody seems to be strange. Because
Jerusalem is.
Look, it's in our synagogue alone, there are 3 Nobel Prize winners.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, but they're normal people, and And by the way, and 2 more that have been passed over at least twice for a Nobel Prize.
Wow.
But it's not an unusual thing here in Jerusalem. But let's leave that aside. The issue that we want to look at, just a little about my background, is that my first degree is in textile engineering. I then studied chemistry and biochemistry in Italy. And then I studied pathology and infectious diseases in Italy. So what we're going to discuss is something that I'm highly qualified to discuss. I've never, as a textile engineer, worked in anything that had to do with the fashion industry. I'm really not interested if it's red or green or blue, but rather things like fireproof fabrics, bulletproof fabrics, fabrics for flak jackets, radar scattering fabrics. If you've ever seen the tents that are the nets that are on top of planes and trucks and helicopters, most people don't know those are actually very active devices. And things that would be not obvious to the general public. So most of what I've done has to do with things that relate to war situations, fabrics that will protect soldiers. Let me give you an example of a type, okay? And this will show you a type of thing that we're doing. We're involved now, for example, in a project with the United States Air Force. And let's just say this. Imagine a soldier is involved in a bomb, okay? And he's unconscious. And the first thing that always happens is his uniform will be on fire. Okay? We want to stop that fire, so we don't want that uniform to be ignitable. We can stop the ignition of a textile. However, I can also add more qualities to it. And that is, if, God forbid, we need to give first aid to that soldier, you know what you're going to do? You're going to rip off his uniform, and you're going to take that piece of fabric, and I don't care how dirty it is, and you're going to put it on the wound. And what it's going to do is it's going to sterilize the wound.
Wow.
Yeah, this is realistic. We can do it. This can be done. And by the way, I can put another element into it, which you're all going to laugh about, but it's true. And that is, a soldier doesn't have to change his uniform on a regular basis. If you will recall the Chilean miners, okay, they were in their cave for 56 days. And the issue that they had was the growth of fungus, which starts from the bottom, your toes, and goes up your body. But because we were able to react very quickly and get them our socks, we were actually able to stop the fungal growth. When they came out of the caves, there were gurneys set up to carry each one away because they thought that the fungal infections would be so great that they wouldn't be able to walk. Well, guess what? Every single one of them got up and ran out.
That is true.
And yeah, and we were actually able to stop it. Now, just to let you know, by the way, they wore those socks, and the socks didn't have a smell.
Wow.
Yeah, and because what are we doing? We're putting a technology, and this is what we're going to talk about today, a technology into the fabric that makes the fabric self-sterilizing. And that changes everything. Now, that's my background. Melory, will you kick in and tell people a little about what you do?
All right, I'm not really sure I can compare. I'm certainly not that smart. I generally like to make sure that I generally like to make sure I am surrounded by people who are certainly smarter than I am. So this is always a good thing. But a little bit about my background. So you can hear from my accent. My education, I was at Onderstpoort, University of Pretoria, Faculty of Veterinary Science. So that is my schooling background. I spent the last 10 years, I've lived in the United States for 21 years. I was for 13 years, I spent in marketing and, sales, in education training, and then from there transitioned into medical writing, where I was my focus was medical devices and FDA. So really and truly, that has been my focus for the last, however many years of my life, is on medical devices. When this, COVID pandemic hit, actually before, back in January, we knew that with all the work that I had been doing with the CDC, with the FDA, I knew that this virus was like a moving target. I needed to know where this virus was going to end. I needed to know what was going to happen, and nobody knew anything. And trying to chase this thing down and knowing where it was going and what it was going to do became a mission. Along with that was the mission of finding what was going to be the future of medical devices. PPEs and medical devices. So what I meant by that is that I've always known, and it's something Jeff likes to say a lot, organisms, microorganisms, viruses are proactive. They know what they're doing, they know how to survive, and they know how to do well. As human beings, we are reactive. We react. So with that, once we have the cut, we'll put on a Band-Aid. But how do we prevent it? And this was the mission that I was on, was to find the future of PPEs. If you know anything at all about PPEs and you know anything at all about medical devices, you know that they are barriers, and that's all they are. They're meant as a barrier between yourself and a contagion, yourself and pollutants in the case of NIOSH products. The problem is, when you're dealing with a living microorganism, how do you protect yourself using a mere barrier?
Mm-hmm.
And so back, and oh gosh, Jeff, I don't even remember when we met. The beginning of last year, I was introduced to Jeff, and I knew this was it. This was the future. This was the future of textiles and the future, our new normal. We were flung into a state of, an abnormal state for us as human beings, where we were now expected to protect ourselves against things we could not see in ways we have never had to do in the past. And for me, this became my mission, and I dedicated myself 100% to this for the last year, because I know what's coming. I know where we're going, and I know that we need to arm ourselves against what's coming. And we need to start being as proactive as those little bugs. Yeah. So that is a synopsis of how I came to be sitting with you today, Harold.
Well, thank you very much, Mel. And I have to agree with you. This is our new normal. I don't think after 9/11 here in the U.S., as you may remember, we never went back to pre-9/11, right? We still have to go through the checks at the airports. We still have to do all those security kinds of things, but we've adapted to it. So to your point, after this year of COVID, I don't know if there's going to be a pre-COVID lifestyle that we go back to. No. It's going to be adapted.
We know too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so now understanding, what you guys have created, this could be part of that new normal as you describe it. So mm-hmm. As we talk, I'd love to hear your point of view of who your customer is. So sure, COVID is everywhere, but you're looking at it in a much more focused way. Who is the customer, and what is their current unmet need? Let me kind of prime it. There are a lot of masks that are out there now, and I know that's one of the primary things we're talking about today. But all masks aren't the same, and all masks don't provide the same protection and coverage. So who is your customer, and what is their unmet need?
Well, what I'd like
Jeff,
to do,
do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm gonna, because what I really would like to do, because we do have somewhat limited time.
Sure.
I want the audience to understand what we're doing, how we're doing it. The why is going to be obvious. Who the customer is going to be obvious. Okay? This company has developed two primary platform technologies. What I mean by platform technologies are a basic scientific principle that can be applied to many different technologies. Okay, the idea is to convert textiles from being a passive device to being an active device. Now, we can do a number of things. For example, one of the things that we do here is we treat cotton fiber, not yarn and not fabric. We treat fiber. Fiber is harvested, it's cleaned, it's made parallel, and we treat it. And what we do is we treat it using ultrasonic sound waves. No chemistry. You'll find that, as we discussed, we are completely sustainable. We recycle 100% of our water and 100% of our chemistry. But what we do is, imagine, if you will, a trough of water. And inside that trough of water, I can put any chemical I want, and I can put cotton fibers. And then I shoot through that trough of water ultrasonic sound waves. And it may be as much as 9,000 to 16,000 per second. You can't hear them, but it's beep, 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 okay? Now, if I've done my job correctly, what will happen is the ultrasonic sound waves will convert to kinetic energy, and they will cause the chemistry to shoot like a bullet. And they will actually go inside the cotton, so that we will have a mechanical bond and it will stay there forever. Now, all chemistry in the world has a different quality. So if I take certain compounds, I can make them self-sterilizing. Other compounds, I can make a fabric, cotton, that doesn't burn. I can make, by the way, I can make cotton, we've done this, that conducts electricity. Which you'd use for radar shielding.
Sure.
We have cotton fabrics that will close a wound in a diabetic patient very fast, and specifically diabetics because they're immunocompromised. We also have, by the way, an interesting thing, and that is an offshoot of this. You'll note, I'm 72 years old, for everybody who doesn't know that. But I guarantee you, everybody out there's got more wrinkles than me. And the reason is I sleep on my pillowcase. We actually can take away your facial wrinkles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, this has to do with a platform, okay? And we can do the same thing in synthetic fibers. All right, but now let's go back to what the discussion is going to be, and that is, how are we going to meet a market need? Remember that what we want to do is, we don't want to be a nice to have.
Correct.
We became a need to have.
That's correct.
And the need to have is basically, I am going to make sure you are safe. I'm going to make sure your children are safe, your parents are safe, your neighbors are safe. That's what I'm going to do. But I need you to cooperate with me to do that. And all you have to do is wear this mask. Now, this is an example of a mask which is self-sterilizing. And when you put the mask on, okay, what will happen is any virus will be destroyed before it can pass through the mask. It also means that if you are a carrier of the disease, you will not spread it. And that's in front of the FDA now. This has been given national priority. But we have our data that has to be fulfilled, and we will fulfill it. And the idea here is we can reopen classrooms.
That's good.
We can put people in football stadiums again. All right. There's any place you have other people. Okay. And what will happen is, I mean, in theory, if everybody were to wear the mask, in 2 to 3 weeks, there would be no virus anymore, because the virus would not be able to find or transmit itself to a host. Now, but then again, this is the tip of the iceberg in what we do.
Right.
Another issue that is very, very common, and I can tell you that as a pathologist, this is what worried me. As you saw from that little, video, I talk about having cancer again and again. Well, I've had it 3 times. And what scared me was not the cancer. I knew I'd get past the cancer. What scared me was, will I get an infection in the hospital?
Right.
That was a far more dangerous situation.
Right.
And here is where technology comes in. I'm not going to go into the background of it having to do with biowarfare and so on and so forth. It's kind of boring. But what we want to look at is the development of a self-sterilizing textile. And once you've got that, what we need to look at, and what's actually the other way around, what we have is, let's look and see what is the source of the bacteria in the hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And once we've identified that source, what is the mode of transmission of that bacteria from patient to patient? Well, there are probably 300 ways bacteria can be transmitted.
Right.
But what we need to look at is what has happened to us as humans. So the primary source, we believe, the primary source, and we've published this, is the body flora of the patients themselves. Your body, according to the literature, is giving off 250,000 bacteria every minute. And the question is, where do they go? Right. Well, what we do know is this. If they stay on your skin, the vast majority of the bacteria will die because skin is not accommodating to bacteria. However, if that bacteria gets to an incubating atmosphere before it dies, you've just given it a new lease on life. And guess what? Your pajama, your sheet, your towel, the nurse's uniform, you name it. If it's a fabric,
mm-hmm.
that is the incubator.
Right.
Now, it's not just that, but we also know that it's a bioaerosol effect. And now I'm going to tell you a little about how this bioaerosol effect looks and works. We did a test over a period of a week where we brought in a group of technicians and we wanted to test the amount of bacteria in a cubic meter of air at different places at different times in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're only counting what are called CFUs, culture forming units. Okay, if the bacteria is not a culture forming unit, we don't care. Okay, and all the dangerous bacteria are culture forming units. So now, what are we going to do? Well, we first measure how much do I have in this room. Okay, if you're sitting in your living room, you probably have about 100 culture forming units, CFUs, in a cubic meter of air. That's fine. We live with that. Go outside, it's even less. But at the elevator in this particular hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning, that number was 300 to 350. Mm-hmm. 100 at home. Now we're 3 times that. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that number was 750 to 850. Right. We're talking 7 times. Now let's go upstairs to the ward. In a ward with 3 beds, the baseline is 1,000. You can't help it. It's going to be there. Okay. But what we're going to look at is what happens during the day. Well, when the nurses change the sheets and the doctors do their rounds, that number goes to 6,000.
Easily.
And when it's 6,000 in the room, it's 4,500 to 4,900 in the hallway, which means we're seeing a bioaerosol effect. Now, that's the good news. Now the bad news, okay? And the bad news is we have what's called body flora. Your body is giving off bacteria all the time. I'm not going to go into why it's there, but we do know that we have today almost everybody in their body flora has antibiotic resistant strains of bacteria. Mm-hmm. Now, as long as they remain between the basal cells and the epidermal cells, they'll remain under control. Everything is okay. But when those antibiotic resistant strains leave the body, they become a bull in the china shop. And you know, the joke I always say is, describe to me methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. And in one word, a pig. Okay, why? Put it on a Petri dish and watch what it does. It's so tenacious. It will take the food. It will take the space. It will push aside all the other bacteria in the Petri dish.
Right.
Because it is dominant. All right. That is the number one cause of death in hospitals. You get that bug, unless we catch it early, you are not going to survive it. Now, it used to be 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there were only two. There was vancomycin-resistant enterococcus and methicillin-resistant staphylococcus aureus. Today, there isn't a bacteria that doesn't have an antibiotic-resistant strain. And I'm going to tell you something that's even worse. This is a case that happened last week. An individual had corona. He was in the hospital. He was recovering.
Okay.
He picked up a hospital-acquired infection, and that's what killed him. Wow. And this is the reality of what we're facing.
Right.
So now, what do we need to do? This thing is not going away. Okay. And I can tell you as a pathologist, there is a pattern. All right. I'm going to tell you what the pattern is. And boy, do I hope I'm wrong. And I mean that seriously. I'm not here to sell you a mask. I'm not worried about sales. What I'm worried about is, where are we going to be a year from now?
Okay.
Who among us is still going to be with us? The issue that you have here now is, we've got to look at what is happening with the virus. This is a coronavirus. Coronaviruses are very, very common viruses. Chances are the vast majority of the audience out there has had a coronavirus at some point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
It may have manifested itself as a headache, a tiredness, a bit of fever, a little muscle ache, and then a few hours later it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's what it is. However, the problem that we have is that this is a virus that has gone through a process called zoonosis. And now, let me explain. Zoonosis from the word zoo, animal. This is a virus that now has certain animal qualities. Humans cannot tolerate that. What we saw in the first line of death are humans that were unable to resist the small amount of the protein that had the animal genome in it. Mm-hmm. What we have now is this. What you're seeing when you see this jump in the numbers, it's not that we're all more socially, around each other and we're spreading the disease. No. It's not that at all. It's a mutation of the virus. The virus knows how to adapt itself to humans, and that's what it's doing. Okay. It needs to survive. The more hosts it has, the better its chances of survival.
Okay.
Now, the next series is where we have to be very careful. And that is when the zoonotic quality, the zoonotic genome, becomes more prevalent.
Okay.
When we talk about, for example, the Spanish flu of 1918 to 1923, why did it stop in 1923? They didn't have any miracle medicines.
Couldn't adapt any further.
What happened was people had natural resistance. But the last person that didn't have natural resistance died. So when you buried him, you buried the last of the virus. Now, what we look at is, what we're looking at is relatively mild. Let me qualify that. We're looking at a relatively low mortality rate. And when you, any virologist will tell you, you look at two factors. You always look at the communicability of the virus from human to human, and then your mortality rate. The mortality rate here is relatively low. We're beginning to see more mortality because more people are getting the virus.
Right.
But the percentage is remaining pretty much the same. If it becomes more dominant through the animal quality of it, then we're going to see a rise in the mortality rate. Now, let's look at what the mortality rates are. SARS. We all remember SARS.
Yes.
Okay, that had a mortality rate of about 10%. What many people don't know is that there was something recently called MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. Okay, the mortality rate, depending on who you ask, is probably around 40%. SARS was probably caused by a bat. We know that Middle East respiratory syndrome was probably caused by a camel.
Okay.
If you ask me what is the source of this one, my guess is probably bats.
Okay.
Okay, but what we've got to do right now is we have to be proactive in defense. And that means, and I'm not trying to sell everybody a mask. I'm not worried about, there's more people out there that need masks than we're going to ever be able to supply. That isn't the issue here. The issue here is quality of life.
Yes.
Whether you're at home or whether you're in the hospital, quality of life.
Yes.
I am sick and tired of hearing people make all sorts of statements or half-truths just to sell you a freaking mask. That's not us, and that will never be us. Let me give you an example. Okay, let me give you an example. You see people who say on their masks, the masks kill 99% of the virus. Well, that's probably true. What you don't know is how long does it take to kill it in?
Right.
Okay, if it takes more time than the time it takes for the virus to pass through the mask, you've done nothing.
And
you've done nothing.
If I can insert one thing here, if nothing else, this will educate a consumer who a year ago wasn't thinking about buying masks. The only time they saw a mask was on TV, a medical show. Now they have to acquire one. And from an intelligence perspective, they don't know what they're getting. They see 99%, they think it's like Lysol. Let's grab it.
Yeah.
They don't understand that there's a time component attached to that. So I appreciate your comment and look forward to more. So
that's, so what I'm looking for is disease control.
Right.
Okay. And the issue is, don't think for 1 second that if we go into the hospital, we're going to walk away from it.
Right.
Because it's worse today than it was when we started the pandemic.
Right.
Things only get worse with time. We've got to be proactive. The problem that I have, and I can tell you, I want the audience to hear this, is that the system, when people go into the system, and I'll tell you, I regretted when I went to medical school that they said, you can't become a doctor. You can become a researcher, but you can't become a doctor. Why? Because I was too old, and nobody wanted to invest in a 35-year-old man who's got to do 12 years of school and residencies and so on before he can even walk out the door.
Yeah.
Well, actually, thank God they said it, because the truth of the matter is I'm a researcher. Research, you research until you drop.
That's right. Never end.
But the issue that you have is the system.
Right.
When I talk to my colleagues, when I talk to any organization in the world, the rule in medicine are two things. A, it's so conservative, it will conserve itself to death. And B, this is the truth. Everybody wants to be first to be second.
Yeah.
We need somebody who's going to champion the cause, who's going to take the statistics, who's going to take the research and say, hey, enough. Now we got to do something.
Yeah.
And what's basically happening is, to a certain extent, you've got to educate, and you may even have to, unfortunately, embarrass people into forcing them to come on board.
So have you had to do that with, let's just take the face mask, for example, to demonstrate to them the efficacy and the power of the face mask? I'm guessing
the FDA gets it. The FDA absolutely. What happened was, one day the nickel dropped.
Okay.
And basically, when we went to the FDA first time, it was like, what do you want from us?
Yeah.
Right? Until somebody, there's one woman that I got to tell you, I can't wait to meet her. Yeah, another mask. And by the way, there are no emergency use approvals in masks.
Right.
Because the FDA knows that if they give one, they're going to be 15,000 of them tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to just go through the paperwork.
Yeah.
And none of right. But what did happen was, when they saw that we were persistent and we forced them to see the technology, forced them to see the data, there was one woman in the FDA who, I will not say her name, but she is my hero. And that is because She got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what she said is, it just takes one. She said, national priority. We got to get this out. We're going to get this. They actually told us that they will approve it within 1 week of our application.
Wow.
Right. However, remember the FDA is about data.
Yeah.
I still have to do the data, and some of the data is actually quite long in getting. I mean, things, for example, people don't know we've got to do biocompatibility testing. That means skin allergy, skin sensitization, skin irritation testing. Some of them take 90 days.
Right.
We've got to do particle elution testing. I'm putting something in a mask. I want to know if I'm going to be breathing it. Now, remember, my hands are tied on a medical side and a chemical side because I've got to be very careful. For example, we never use nanotechnology.
Oh, you don't?
No, because...
No, I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff. It's an important point.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to describe a little more about that to the audience, particularly certain metallic.
What we have is a situation, for example, let me give you an example. Nanosilver. We never touch this stuff. Never touch it. And the reason is this. Nobody knows what the residual effect is of transdermal ingestion. Oh. Remember, these particles can be so small that they will go through your skin, especially if you have an oil. Right. Secondly, we now know for a fact that nanosilver is lethal to human liver function. Oh. Mm-hmm. Okay, then I want to bring out another thing. What happens if you breathe this stuff? So I can tell you, do you remember we always talked about asbestos? Mm-hmm. Well, I, as a researcher, and I haven't really had the time to go into it, but I'm not so sure it was because it was asbestos.
Oh, really?
Mesothelioma. I think it could have been because it was nano. And the reason is it attaches itself to the endothelial tissue. And eventually, if you understand enough about DNA transposition, eventually it will somehow stimulate something like a stem cell. Okay. And then what will happen is it'll start the cycle of a progenitor cell. And so a cell duplicates, but when it duplicates with a message that says duplicate. Yeah. So you're going 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on. Well, guess what? That's cancer.
Exponential growth.
Now, yeah, it's exponential growth. And probably we're going to be seeing this with a lot of nanocompounds. So while nano is a phenomenal idea and a phenomenal concept, it doesn't have a place everywhere in the world. It's not a universal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we don't use it. What we have developed here are systems for the development of only safe chemistry. We use basically everything we use is natural. The issue is how you apply it. Right. What the company has done now is here in Jerusalem, we have 6,000 feet in one facility and 24,000 feet in another. We have now scaled up to mass production. What we need to do, I'd say semi-scale. What we need to do now is we just need money. Okay. I mean, we're selling masks, it's fine, but it's not where it's at. We've got to go into mass production. We want to do mass production here in Israel and in the United States for the United States. Okay. Recently, and I don't know if the audience is aware of it, but this happened at the end of the last administration, but President Biden is pushing it now. And that has to do with the invoking the Berry Amendment. Okay, and the Berry Amendment says that the United States military must buy made in America. Right. Well, they want to do that for healthcare. Got it. Okay, because America must be independent. Now, somebody's going to ask me, what about the vaccination? Okay, so I want to just comment on that, and then we'll go back to any points I haven't picked up. I've had the second vaccination 2 weeks ago. So according to the statistics, I should be at a point where I am in the 95% percentile of people who will not get the disease. I should be. But having had cancer 3 times, I am absolutely immunocompromised.
Right.
So probably I still am at risk. However, I think that what we're going to see is what is called viral drifting.
Okay.
And that means that the vaccination will probably be obsolete in the not too distant future. It will not cover every possible. Remember, the joke I always make is if somebody comes to you and says, listen, bet on man or bet on the bugs, put your money on the bugs. They always win.
Yeah. Well, the speed to market from a couple of these vaccines is a result of work they were doing on previous.
Right.
So they just adapted it for this application. So I expect that that's going to be a continuous process for them as things develop. So to your point, I think that's a very accurate piece.
So, but again, as I told you before, we quote Erasmus in 1556, and that is prevention is the best medicine. Correct. Just don't get sick.
Just don't get sick.
Okay. Just don't get sick. Okay. All right. You don't. That's the easiest thing to do, and if we can do it for a mask that costs a couple of bucks, and you can use this mask until it falls apart, which is a couple of months. Who cares?
Right. So the cool part about this is it's not the mask that's the secret sauce. It's the technology and the fiber.
That's right.
So that means that we can use it for a variety of different applications in a variety of different environments. Where have we used it in the past, or how is it being applied currently that's unique to non-mask users?
Correct. What we also need to do is that there will have to be, and this is the opportunity, an educational learning curve for the public.
Sure.
Okay, because people don't really relate to their masks. And by the way, one of the things is when you see people wearing these, simple surgical masks, you will get sick wearing those masks. That mask will protect you probably for the first and the second breath of somebody, but that's it. Don't expect more than that. And it may not even do that.
Yeah. Again, this is a year old, and people aren't aware of the value of a mask. They think as long as I have something on my face, I can get into the store to shop, not recognizing that there needs to be more to it than that, especially in a concentrated, dense area where people are laughing, talking, a lot of air is being exchanged. So until they understand the value of a mask like yours, that they will continue to live in ignorance of the true value that a mask should provide.
Look, a comment about N95 masks.
And also,
I just want to make a quick comment about N95s. In Europe, they're called FFP2. The issue that you have is that all of these masks are made out of polypropylene. And viruses love polypropylene. They can live there for a long time. When we talk about an N95 respirator, the purpose of the mask is to filter out particles from the air. It is not there to protect you against disease. It will act as a barrier. So we can't say it doesn't have a value. It definitely has a value. But the problem that you have is bacteria live very well on it. And look at the nature of man. They don't change their mask twice a day.
Right.
They use the same mask over and over and over. Right. Until you, as Melory said in the discussion before, you wind up wearing your Petri dish.
Right. That's unbelievable.
And Harold, I'm going to just comment on there. You had said to us about the applications beyond masks. If you think, about what Jeff had just said about being able to put this technology into many different applications, because we have a way to, let's just put it at our secret sauce. Imagine if we could put this technology into, say, AC filters. So air conditioning filters. What would that do to those of us sitting on an airplane? If we know that the air circulating the plane is going through a self-sterilizing filter, how much better would we feel about staying on that or in that hotel room or in that classroom or hospital room. So this is just another application beyond masks. If you're looking at things, clothing, uniforms, we've spoken about this at length earlier. We have the ability to apply our secret sauce to any textile, changing the consistency, the feel, the touch of the fabric. It remains exactly the same because the actual chemistry is in the fiber of the textile, of the fabric. So your uniform will still be the same color. It will still be the same weight. It will still have the same feel. Nothing changes. So you look at industries where people are in contact with other people, and let's look beyond hospitals because that's the obvious. Let's look at the hospitality or in restaurants where you have people in contact. Let's go back to our airplane. Those the flight attendants on those planes, their uniforms are coming into contact with other people. When they get off that plane, they're carrying whatever is on them that they picked up in the plane out into the hotel with them, out into the environment with them. Imagine if they could serve their the customers, with sterilizing gloves that can be just rewashed. The other thing that I love about the of how there we go of how we apply the chemistry to the fabric is that you are able you don't need any longer to worry about sterilizing fabric. It re-sterilizes itself every few minutes, and when I say minutes, sometimes within seconds. If it's re-sterilizing itself really, really quickly, under 5 minutes, you don't have to worry about that sterilized washing that destroys the fabric. You can water wash with regular detergents without having to worry about totally destroying the garments. You extend the life of the garment because no longer have to send it off to those specialty, facility laundered. So there are so many applications that we can apply. Our technologies go and just natural textiles or regular fabrics into plastics, like Jeff showed you, propylene in the mask or AC, AC filters. We have new technologies coming that Jeff can talk a little bit, able to put our technology, our chemistries for this time into places that we've never been able to, they've never been able to before, like, for example, into latex or nitrile. So again, what is that going to do to PPEs? Is this going to become the new PPE? Why use a PPE that is just a barrier? That's just the same form of print that we've been using for 500 years or probably longer. All you're doing is you're throwing something over yourself to protect yourself or the patient, whoever you're seeing, from the host from the contagion. But you're not preventing the infection. You're still going to carry it home on your clothing. You're still going to walk it around the hospital or the hotel or the airplane, the school. Now, if you're looking at it just in terms of PPEs, we have turned ordinary fabric into active medical devices. They actively destroy organisms, 99.99% under 5 minutes. And to Jeff's point earlier, that is supremely important, the point that it is so fast. Because what is the point of having it on your clothing for 48 hours or however long it takes to kill the microorganisms? Because like Jeff said, there are a lot of chemistries that can kill. That, sure, but how to take and have them around on your body while you transfer them from person to person. So just to answer your earlier question about masks.
I want to interject a small anecdote.
Please.
And this may turn everybody off to this conversation. And that's this.
Oh no!
2 years ago, yeah, I'm going to tell them the story. 2 years ago, I made towels, and so I started using the towel, and I use it every day, and everything is fine. And my wife wants to wash my towel, and of course I say no. And it got to the point that as we approached 1 year, she said to me, "My dear, I love you, but there's a limit." And I said to her, wait. I'm going to go back to the factory. I'm going to bring in another towel. Okay? And I'm going to fold them both up. And if you can tell me which is the new one and which is the year-old one, I agree you can wash it. I just want you to know she couldn't. Because when it's self-sterilizing, unless it gets physically dirty, it never has an odor. Now, the same thing, it's going to sound terrible, but I'm sorry to tell you this, but I change my socks once a month.
Scaring me.
I change them once a month, even if they don't need it.
So for all the moms out there, Harold, for anybody who is a mom or a dad of teenage boys, can you imagine having socks for teenage boys that never stink? That is as a mom, that is my pet peeve, going into my son's bedrooms and their rooms always smell like stinky socks.
It always smells like feet, right? So
yeah, it always smells like feet. In our case, I can put you in a gym. And your uniform, I'll tell you, what I did mention is that I've worked as an advisor to NASA. And one of the issues that the astronauts have has to do with osteoporosis and muscular atrophy, which occurs immediately when they're in outer space. At the same time, their heartbeat and their blood pressure drops. So they need to continually have high levels of aerobic energy. Right. Well, another technology that we developed is, and by the way, the astronauts, when they go up, wear our socks, and just one pair of socks, that's it. They can wear them for a year. Because generally speaking, in the space probes, they're usually wearing t-shirts, shorts, and a pair of socks.
Control. I love it.
And they're not walking on a dirty surface, so the socks don't even get soiled.
Right.
But they need to do a very high, between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours a day of high level aerobics to stop the effects of osteoporosis and muscle atrophy. So we developed a fabric, or I developed a fabric for them, which actually brings down their heartbeat during the exercise regimen.
Really?
Yeah. And I'll tell you how I did it. It's something which a pathologist would do, not a textile engineer. What causes your heart to beat fast? Okay, so what we're going to do is your heart beats fast because your body has to perspire so that you can primarily cool down your internal organs. So if I can cool your internal organs, I can bring your heartbeat down, and that's what the garment does. So it actually, so what happens is if you're riding your bicycle and you're at 150 beats per minute,
right?
I'll bring it down to about 140.
So with the Olympics coming up this summer, should we be looking for a world record?
So I tell you what happened. I went and I had my fabrics tested at the University of Greenwich, which is where everything for the Olympics is tested. And we went in, and after 3 days of tests, they came out and they said, "Dr. Gabbay, we've got good news and bad news." So I said, "What's the good news?" He says, "The stuff really works." I said, "Okay." So what's the bad news? You can't sell it to anybody. Either everybody gets it or nobody gets it.
Well, that's the problem, because I'm using steroids.
It is. It's cheating, right? It's sports enhancing. Remember the Speedo, the Speedo bathing suit.
Right.
It was the same type of thing. It's the same thing. Only the Speedo bathing suit, they got it in before they realized what it was. So if you look at swimming championships, you'll always see, two sets of results, cheating, with and without the bathing suit. Right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, this has been a fabulous conversation. I got a feeling we want to do a part 2 on this, because we didn't even scratch the surface on a lot of the stuff you're doing. But I can't thank you enough for your time today. There's still a couple outside questions like, well, let's finish with this. You're doing a lot of work in the lab. What do you do for fun?
That's my fun.
All right.
Hey, I wake up every morning and you can't see it, but I pinch myself because I'm doing what I want to do. I'm living my dream.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I wish we all could do something like that. But I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm certain we're going to want to do this again because there are going to be a lot of questions as a result of this initial one. Please keep us posted on the FDA process. We'll definitely post it on our website, and we'll put a link to your website so that they can look at it more directly.
Okay.
And, we'll go from there. So, Dr. Gabbay, Melory, Johnson, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a joy. I've learned so much, and we'll look forward to the next conversation. So with that, we'll say goodbye to our audience, and we'll see you next on the MIC Conversations.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.